Well, this comes as the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the strikes did very significant damage at Fordo. Those are his words. That, of course, is Iran's, most heavily fortified, as in deep down that mountain, nuclear enrichment facility. But the extent of the damage still must be determined. And the Prime Minister says overall still needs more information to assess what the U.S. achieved. U.S. officials say it's too early to know for certain whether the strikes totally obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities. That, of course, is what, though, the defense secretary and the president have claimed. I want to bring in retired Navy Admiral James Stavridis, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander and partner of the Carlyle Group, the investment firm. So, Admiral, I appreciate your time. So, obviously, no one knows for sure quite yet the damage, given these facilities are buried in underground tunnels, given that we know, and Vice President Vance said today even, that maybe 60% of the enriched material may have already been moved to other sites, right? So we don't yet know. But based on what you're learning, is the president right when he uses the word obliterated to describe Iran's nuclear program tonight?
Well, I'd say that's enthusiastic and extremely optimistic, but not yet accurate. And I think you're going to see more and more of the assessments kind of hedge about how far we've gone here. And look, I've over the course of my career done decades of different battle damage assessments. You can't do them in an hour. You can't do them in a couple of days. Typically, it's going to take weeks because, Erin, you know this, it's the confluence of what you can see from the overhead satellites, what you can hear electronically, what are our opponents saying about what has happened, what does our human intelligence on the ground have to say. Let's face it, the Israelis clearly have penetrated Iranian society. There's a lot of data that has yet to come in, so I am hopeful that we have obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. Put me down as skeptical at this point. Let's see what happens over the next few weeks.
So, and interesting that you're giving that time frame on it. Now, again, J.D. Vance saying that 60% of the enriched material may have been moved to other sites. So there's other sites and other places, known and unknown, aside from the ones that the U.S. struck. But on the ones that the U.S. struck, we have a couple of animations, Admiral, of exactly what happened. And when you look at some of these powerful bombs that were used to penetrate deep down into the mountain, for example, at Fordow, do you think that we will be able to get an answer? You know, now you can see the satellite images and you see kind of 6 big craters on the satellite. But will we be able to really know? Because it seemed like even coming into this, there was uncertainty about how much they had under there and how deep it really was.
Yeah. I think eventually being weeks, not months or years, we will have a pretty clear idea. It's funny you use the words knowns and unknowns. I worked for a couple of years as chief of staff to Don Rumsfeld, who talked an awful lot, as you'll remember, about known unknowns. I think that's what we're dealing with here. What we know is that some amount of both the enriched uranium itself, some level of the machinery probably bled out of these sites before those big, beautiful B-2s you're showing showed up. Some of it has been dispersed around the country. We need to remember Iran is a huge country, 2.5 times the size of Texas. It's got plenty of places to hide everything from centrifuges to hundreds of pounds of enriched uranium. And oh, by the way, those scientists, you can't kill them all. That knowledge is going to continue. So to simply obliterate this program, boy, it may not be mission impossible, but it's mission really difficult. We ought to be looking at it with a healthy dose of skepticism and recognize we may have to conduct further strikes or, perhaps better yet, conduct some real diplomacy to end this program.
You know, you talk about known unknowns. I mean, in a sense, we know we're in a whole new world. It's unsettling and disturbing for many. And yet nobody knows what that means. So, you talk about further strikes. Those strikes to the country receiving them is a war, right? They're being struck by the most powerful country in the world. No one seems to have any idea what to expect from Iran at this point. What do you think, Admiral, retaliation looks like from Iran?
I think the Iranians have essentially three options. One is, and it's not going to happen, but simply capitulate, to say, you know what, you crushed us, you destroyed our nuclear program, we're now ready to have talks with you, unconditional surrender. It's an option, highly unlikely they will take it. Option two, far more likely, they'll launch a series of kind of face-saving strikes, some ballistic missiles, perhaps against American forces even, in Iraq, in Syria, not big concentration areas. They'll continue to launch against Israel, face-saving means, but then let's hope they'll be willing to come back to the table and negotiate. And that's what the Trump administration, I think correctly, has articulated. And cue up Steve Witkoff, Marco Rubio, let's do a deal. And then option three, which worries me, and I don't think is impossible, and you're showing those B-2s flying across the ocean. What if Iran decides to go big, meaning close the Strait of Hormuz, conduct targeted assassinations against American officials, American businessmen, perhaps throughout the region, activate sleeper cells in the United States, launch concentrated ballistic missile attacks against pinpoint targets like Haifa or Bahrain, the headquarters of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet. Iran could take that option three and go big. I hope they don't. I hope they go with option two. I hope there's some diplomacy ahead. And I hope Steve Witkoff can get on a jet and talk us through this situation.
All right, Admiral Stavridis, thank you so very much on this Sunday night. Well, after deciding